Today on Legally Yes, Jonas and Sophie Turner custody issues have been settled as Angelina Jolie slams a biased judge in her ongoing case against Brad Pitt. Plus, a contestant from Love is Blind sues over alleged sexual assault, and Clayton Echard claims he is not the father. We've got that plus so much more in today's Legally Yes. Hey everyone, and welcome to Legally Yes. I'm Christina. That's, of course, Neama Rahmani, President and CEO of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Hi, Neama. How are you?
I'm doing great, Christina. How about you?
Doing really well. We got to get right into it because Us Weekly confirmed that Jonas and Sophie Turner believe an amicable resolution on all issues between them is forthcoming. So per court documents, the pair have agreed to swap custody of their two daughters through January 7th of next year. So Sophie will keep the girls until October 21st, during which time she may travel with them throughout the U.S. and the U.K. as she pleases. Joe will then take his daughters until November 2nd. So we've been talking about this case for quite some time. What do you think about this resolution? And is this still just temporary?
It still is just temporary, but I'm not surprised that Joe and Sophie set aside their differences for the best interest of the kids. She did file that lawsuit to try to move them to the UK. That would have been a tough legal hurdle for her to overcome. The judge was likely going to award joint custody anyway and give the parents some free rein, if they agreed, of course. So they basically agreed to that, at least in the short term, until January 2024, to avoid unnecessary litigation.
So when, you're dealing with children that are, overseas, is it usually like maybe 6 months with one parent, 6 months with another? Because it's such a far distance to travel. Is that how a judge would usually maybe plan this?
It's rare to have kids that are overseas or in another state.
Right.
Usually children, especially school-age children, have to be with one parent during the school year. Mm-hmm. So you'll see, for instance, Britney Spears' situation where Kevin took the kids to Hawaii. You're not going to usually have 6 months and 6 months when you're dealing with school or daycare or those types of things.
Interesting. We'll have to wait and see what happens because, she claims that they were planning to, live their forever home in the UK. So I think that's where she probably wants to raise them. But we'll see if Joe has issues with that.
Well, this is only temporary, of course. So at any moment, she could petition the court for something more permanent or starting 2024, the parties can essentially start all over. I mean, that agreement is no longer valid. So we'll see if this is a temporary situation or they're going to be able to work out something more permanent.
All right, moving on over to Angelina Jolie. She alleged the judge who oversaw her child custody case was biased and favored her ex-husband, Brad Pitt. In a 2-page letter dated September 29th and obtained by The Post, she urged California Governor Gavin Newsom to support Pitt's law, which would require domestic violence training for judges, mediators, and other court professionals on the effects of child abuse and trauma. So a source close to Angelina told The Post that the actress is pushing for the legislation after the trauma she encountered under Los Angeles Judge John W. Odekirk, who refused to allow her kids to testify about domestic violence they experienced at the hands of their father, allegedly. So what exactly is Pitt's law, if I'm saying this correctly, and how did that come about?
Pitt's law came about because of a really sad case here in Los Angeles where there was a bitter custody dispute and the father took the child, a very young child, 5 years old, took him to Disneyland and then ended up killing him. And the mom in the case had raised some serious concerns about domestic violence with the family law judge, but the judge still granted joint custody. She wanted sole custody. So that was the basis for the law. It's gone through the California state legislature, and it's really up to Gavin Newsom right now, the governor here, to sign it into law or veto it.
So do you think Angelina has a claim in this? I mean, that's a pretty, severe thing to try to go through, saying that, this judge was biased and didn't want her children to testify in this case. So what is she hoping for going forward?
I don't think Angelina has a good case here, unfortunately for her. And, this is someone who lost. And, we're talking about judges, but it's important to note that in Brad and Angelina's case, it was a retired judge. It was an arbitrator. So they decided and they agreed to get outside of the court system. They didn't want a family law judge. They wanted to do things privately, probably because of the media attention. So this is a judge that Angelina Jolie had to agree to. Parties have to agree to an arbitrator, either outright or sometimes what they'll do is what's called a strike list. They'll generate 5 random arbitrators and each side will strike 2, for instance. But one way or another, Angelina Jolie agreed to arbitration and agreed to this judge. So, for her to try to unwind it right now, it's just not possible under the law.
The ongoing saga. This has been going on for years. All right, moving on over to Clayton Echard. We talked about this story a couple weeks ago, but his paternity results have confirmed that he is not the father of the twin babies that his ex is expecting. But however, the anonymous 33-year-old woman told Us Weekly in a statement that the former reality star is lying about the results. She said the testing is ongoing because they said that there was an issue with her sample and that they need another sample from her. She also claimed that an employee named Brett at the biotechnology company focused on prenatal diagnostic testing, whom she spoke with, is not saying that the test is inconclusive. It's just ongoing and they need another sample to finish it up. She also alleges that she has been granted an order of protection and claimed that Clayton will be required to remove his Instagram video denying his paternity as it contains untrue statements. So that video is still up. So does that mean that these statements are true? Is she just kind of grasping at straws at this point?
Well, Christina, it's tough to know what those paternity tests are, but, if you're relying on what Clayton said, look, DNA testing right now is very accurate. So assuming that the test results show that he's not the father, this is a very well accepted science right now. This isn't, 30 years ago when we were dealing with OJ, for instance, DNA testing is accurate to, statistically significantly less than 1%. With respect to taking the video down, that's not going to happen. Judges generally don't order those types of things. That's what's considered a prior restraint on speech. Now, of course, if Clayton says something that's defamatory, the woman can sue and get money damages, but judges generally don't restrain speech like that.
And she's also saying that her tests are inconclusive as well. It just seems odd that her test would be inconclusive. Like, she's carrying the babies.
Yeah, it's very strange. So obviously, we don't know. I'm not a scientist, but, based on my understanding of these tests and having dealt with DNA a lot over the course of my career, for there to be an inaccurate test result, that would be very surprising.
All right. Well, it seems like this one may be wrapped up, but we'll have to wait and see. Moving on. This is an interesting story. So Tran Dang, who filmed for Love is Blind's 5th season, but has not been featured in any of the episodes that have come out, filed a lawsuit against Kinetic Content and Delirium TV, alleging that she was sexually assaulted on set by her then fiance, fellow participant Thomas Smith, and that producers did nothing to stop it. So in her complaint, she said that she got engaged during filming. However, neither was named when Netflix announced the season 5 cast back in September. She said she reported the alleged incident to an assistant producer whom she claimed gaslighted her by implying that she was at fault for what had happened with Thomas by not communicating effectively or somehow not taking the relationship seriously. In response, the show's creator claimed to People magazine that production was never told that she felt unsafe or experienced any of the allegations that was made. She is also suing producers for false imprisonment, claiming that she was required to remain on call in her hotel room and subjected to around-the-clock surveillance that left her unable to exercise her will in going anywhere she was lawfully allowed to do. She also thinks that 24-hour surveillance means most of the alleged incidents ended up on film. She's seeking more than $1 million in damages, claiming that she suffered extreme emotional stress, pain, mental anguish, and is suffering as a result of the ordeal. If she can prove this, if this is on video like she claims, since they were under 24-hour surveillance, is this production company in a lot of trouble?
Potentially, yes, but I think this is going to be a tough case for Tran, and this is why. She may have a case against Thomas for sexual assault, but, if you're talking about holding someone else, an entity, civilly liable for the criminal conduct of another, it's not easy. Thomas was not an employee of the production company, so she would have to show that the production company had some sort of independent duty to stop this, and did not do so. And that's why the production company is saying, listen, we had no notice. There was no complaints. You can't hold us civilly responsible for the misconduct of another person. Now, with respect to the false...
She probably will not receive a settlement in this case, you think?
Well, the case still may settle, but I don't think it's a very strong civil claim against the production company. Again, unless she has some evidence that they were on notice that, he was dangerous and they still put them together nonetheless. That can certainly change things. But if the production company didn't know, it's going to be very hard for her to win the case with respect to the sexual assault. Now, false imprisonment is different because that's directly against the production company. And those are allegations that, she was in prison. For that, really, we'd have to look at the agreement that she signed as talent in a reality show. And oftentimes those sorts of things are spelled out. There are requirements, what is expected of one, and there's pretty strong liability waivers. So, that's really more of a waiver issue. So Tran would have to take a close look at that agreement, see what she agreed to. And did her consent to be filmed exceed the scope of the agreement? I'm guessing it didn't, but that agreement will control.
Right. It seems like some other contestants have come forward in making not similar allegations against the company, but they have said that conditions filming were not the best. Does it seem like maybe if more and more people come forward about those conditions, could either the show be canceled or will they just be forced to change their production rules and regulations and things like that?
Yeah, one or both could happen. Obviously, networks and production companies, they don't like to be sued. They don't like the bad publicity. It costs them money, both in terms of legal fees and in terms of views. So if this becomes a problem on set, I could see the network potentially pulling the plug or the production company having to change the way they do things, and obviously this is a big issue in reality TV right now. We see, talent trying to unionize. They think they're not being treated fairly. And I think part of the problem is there's so many people that are competing for spots on these shows, right? So sometimes the production company, because they have the bargaining advantage, because they could put a take it or leave it offer with someone that really wants to be on the show. And if the person doesn't play ball, then there's 10 or maybe even 100 other people that will take their spot.
Neama, thank you so much for your expertise as always.
Thanks, Christina. See you next week.
See you next week. And everybody keep commenting and keep subscribing. Bye. For more news, content, and exclusive interviews, make sure to hit the sub, like, and bell button down below and visit usmagazine.com.